Hey guys, it's Sunray, and welcome back to the My So-Called Thoughts podcast. Hello, hello. How are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well myself, even though nobody asked. But hello, welcome to the My So-Called Thoughts podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Sunray. I'm a wife, mama, and musician. And if this is your first time listening to the podcast, this is a podcast where basically we just talk about everything. All the thoughts I'm having, I talk about my opinions on the outside world, my opinions on social media, my opinions on things that we deal with in society, but also just real life things too, faith, things we're going through, all that type of stuff. That's what we talk about here. It's my so-called thoughts. So thank you so much for tuning in. Here we are, episode 15. We did not have an episode last week because of Thanksgiving. And if you're in America, we celebrate Thanksgiving. I celebrated. I decided because I usually post on Thursdays instead of just changing the day and it just being a week, that most people, at least in America, are traveling and visiting with family, that I would just take the week to do that. So if you do celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope that you had an amazing Thanksgiving and that you were able to spend time with family or at least just be thankful. I know some people don't celebrate it, but in my opinion, even if you just take the day to just say, I'm going to be thankful, or even if it's just getting together with family to eat, that's always awesome. But we should always be thankful. We should always be thankful for what we have, and we should always eat good food, right? But yeah, want to go ahead and just dive into today's episode. Before I say anything, of course, wherever you are streaming the podcast, just know that you can stream it on YouTube, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We also have an Instagram page, which is at My So-Called Thoughts Pod. Again, that's at My So-Called Thoughts Pod. So go ahead and follow the Instagram page, and of course, subscribe, leave a like, comment, or review on your platform of choice. Really appreciate that, and I also just love, just hearing the feedback and your opinions or your thoughts on whatever we're talking about. But going ahead, of course, and diving in, because I never like to, waste any time. 20 things I've learned in my 20s. I actually got this idea from like another creator. They didn't do this exact idea, but they pretty much just did I think they were turning 25. They did 25 things that they've learned in their years, whatever. And I was just thinking about, obviously, as the year comes to a close, I've been thinking about just some of the things that I've learned this year, just how the 20s can just be so daunting, especially for millennials. And I talk about that, if you go ahead and listen to my second episode, The Millennial Curse, go listen to that, little peep that episode. But yeah, I was thinking about this. I am 28 years old, so obviously my 20s are not over with. I turned 28 last month in October, and I've just been thinking about this, and I just feel like there's so much that we learn in our 20s, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it and share it. And then hopefully after, if you have any opinions or some of the things that you've learned in your 20s, please leave a comment and let me know, because I'm interested. Like I said, I've been thinking about my own life and thinking about the different seasons I've been in and such, and the things I've learned. And I just feel like, whether you are in your 20s or not, there's so much to learn about this. And, I think just listening to, not just saying, oh, you need to listen to me or anything, but listening to somebody else, I like to hear about other people's experiences and some of the things that they learned, because you never know what you could take in, what you could absorb, or, what you may catch on to. So that's what also just why I wanted to share this. So I think this can be helpful whether or not you're in your 20s, you've passed your 20s or whatever. And that's why I said I'm also interested in, of course, hearing, what you may have gone through in your 20s, or if you're only 21 or you're 28 or you're 25, whatever. So I just want to go ahead and dive into it. And some of these points will go together, and I kind of tried to put them in an order that would make sense. And I'll talk about that more soon. But number one, let's just get into it. Learn how to care for yourself before anyone else. And I feel like this is a big one, which is why I said it's number one. We're starting off strong. I feel like this is something that is obviously oh, that's common sense, duh, right? But I just think it sometimes doesn't happen if you're not intentional about it. So for me, I got married when I was 23. And before we got married, I was living with my parents. He was living with a family friend. So he was already like moved out of his parents' house for several years. But so before we got married, my husband and we got our apartment, so that it would be ready by the time we got married, because we didn't live together before we were married and we didn't want to. We wanted to wait until we got married to live together. So, we wanted to make sure, like I said, we had our apartment and we had gotten it set up. At least we had it, like 2 months before the wedding. So not too soon or anything like that. And, for a good minute, we were trying to decide, like, okay, well, who's going to live there? Like, we're going to have this apartment for 2 months. Obviously we're going to come together and live there together, of course, once we get married, but like, how are we going to handle this? And, we ended up coming to the conclusion that I should move into the apartment and move out of my parents' house. And, he didn't make that decision. Like, he didn't suggest that. It was actually me, because I had never lived on my own before. Like, I never went and like stayed at college or anything like that. And I felt personally that I was like, you know what, hold on a second. Like, obviously when you get married, there could be like a culture shock if you've never like lived with the opposite sex, or, whatever. Or if you just never had to like, it's just different when you're married than versus like a roommate or like living with your family. And I just felt like for myself, I was like, look, I have never like really like grocery shopped. I've never had to cook, consistently and like cook, you know what I mean? Like, not that I didn't like cook at my parents' house, but like, well, I didn't, but like I knew how to make like some meals, but like, me and my husband, obviously when you get married, you kind of talk about roles and stuff. And we had kind of agreed that I would do the cooking which I actually, I know some people that don't like the traditional lifestyle may say, oh, why does he cook? Well, first of all, he can't cook. Okay. Well, he makes bomb breakfast, but I also like, I actually like enjoyed cooking. I just didn't experiment enough with it, and I wanted to get better at it. And it was something I was interested in. And it was just how we wanted to do things in our marriage. But like, yeah, cooking and like having to like clean an entire living space. Like before I was just cleaning my room and the occasional helping around the house, paying rent and like just adulting things. And I just kind of felt like what I didn't want to happen was for us to get married and all this just kind of would fall into my lap, and I would just kind of have to like adapt quickly. So that's why I was more so like, you know what, like this is going to be hard, but like I think that I should move out and like learn, like let me go practice before we get married, so that we don't get married and then like we're, arguments or different things are coming up, because not just because I was like trying to adapt, but just because, obviously there's so much to learn when you get married. And I was like, these are like life skills that like I feel like I should enhance on my own and for myself, excuse me. I didn't want to walk into marriage clueless. I wanted, once we got married, like simple things like that, you know what I mean? Because when you get married, obviously you're learning about each other, your schedules are meshing together and just life goals and stuff. But I was like, this is basic stuff that I should know, and I need to get my life together, you know what I mean, on my own. So that is what I did. And it was great because I got used to it. I got used to cleaning the whole apartment and like upkeep and like cooking and stuff like that. And having to go to the grocery store. And it was nice because it was like, okay, I'm having this moment to learn how to be alone on my own as an adult. And I value that time so much. I look back and I feel like I don't remember much of it because I was so stressed out with the wedding planning. But, I can definitely say that like I'm so happy that I did that because I was able to learn how to be independent without being like attached to somebody in a marriage. And that's of course nothing against my husband, but I just think that having that moment of maturity was crucial in my 20s, because in your 20s, you're maturing and, you're learning and stuff like that. And I just think that is so important to have that moment of maturity, that I was able to mature and grow on my own. And I could do a whole podcast on like prepping for marriage and stuff. Maybe I will in the future, but I just think that is so crucial. But not to divert, too much. obviously I know that this may not work for everyone's circumstances, and I'm not saying that like, oh, you have to do exactly what I did, but I think if you have the opportunity or you're in a place to become more independent in your 20s, whether that is moving out of your parents' house or, living on your own before you get married, or just it's more so about just learn how to care for yourself so that you can care for someone else. Because me having that 2-month time period, I was able to learn how to do different things so that I could take care of my husband and do my role as the wife, in our marriage. And it was beneficial, you know what I mean? So by the time he moved in, I was already used to doing things and used to all that type of stuff. And again, it's just life skills that I feel like are important, regardless of if you are getting married. Let's say you're just moving out and you're moving in with a roommate. Well, learn how to care for yourself. Don't just throw everything on your roommate or whatever. Whatever the circumstance is, independence as an adult, I think, is crucial. And this is something that, of course, we, deal with in our 20s. So I wanted to talk about that one first. Going into number 2, streamline what you can. And this one has been a huge one for me. Whether it's cooking, whether it's cleaning, whether it's like minimalism, find ways to streamline your life. And I'll explain more, of course. Like, I remember when me and my husband were first married, of course, like I just was talking about briefly, we kind of had opposite work schedules sometimes. And I would always, be concerned about like, oh my God, like what are we going to have for dinner, and stuff like that, because like I mentioned, like I mostly handle dinner because my husband is not good at cooking. Except he makes a mean steak. I know I said breakfast, but he makes a real good steak. Anyway, so because we had like opposite schedules, like sometimes I'd be working in the morning and he'd be working in the evenings or vice versa. I would be like, oh shoot, like how are we going to eat? You know what I'm saying? Like, cause if I'm getting out late, or he's getting out early, what's he going to eat? And like stuff like that. So I looked into like one pot meals, crock pot. Oh my God, I live by my crock pot even to this day. Like just things like that would help us, remain healthy because we're getting a well-balanced meal. And we didn't also have to, be home for the cooking as far as the crock pot is like concerned. And like, I know it sounds cheesy, but like streamlining stuff like this is just huge. And, obviously health is important. So which, we're really into, having good meals and just maintaining health. It actually helped us. And, now that I'm a mom and I've got a toddler running around, like finding ways to simplify things like cooking has just made my life so much easier. And like, we still eat good. Like, look up crockpot meals on Pinterest. Like, you will not be disappointed. And I also just think like streamlining, like getting multifunctional things. Like, for example, when we were pregnant and we were getting things for our soon to be born son, we got like this 3-in-1 crib, and it starts off as like a mini crib bassinet, and then you get the pieces where it turns into a crib, like a big crib, and then it turns into a taller bed once he becomes of age to be in a taller bed. Now it was like a little pricey, I'll be honest and say it was like $600, but like there are cribs that go for like that price exactly. But then you also just think about like having to buy a bassinet, a crib, and a toddler bed, and the mattress and all that, and the mattresses and all that type of stuff. And, now like we don't have to buy multiple things for years, for his life. And, and he will have a place to sleep for several years of his life, and we don't have to worry about it. And like, it may seem like silly, but like things like this, like just streamlining and getting multifunctional things or finding a way to like make your life easier with different things has just been like key. I know that there are some like apps out there that like help people budget and like, different things like that. Or like, this may sound even silly, but like using your calendar on your phone, writing down when your bills need to be paid, all that type of stuff has just, doing stuff like that has just been and can be like a game changer. I've also, looked into different ways into like organizing our home and keeping things tidy. The best way to keep things tidy is making sure that everything has a place. When everything has a place, you can always put something back and things are less, clutter-like. And, another thing like cleaning up at night. You know, every time I make dinner, I clean up, I do the dishes, or I throw them in the dishwasher. I clean up my son's room. I pick up, all of his toys in the living room. We do that type of stuff because then we wake up in the morning and, whether we're getting up and trying to get ready to start the day or whatever, we don't have to deal with all this stuff. And I know it sounds like little small things, but these little small things can literally make a difference in your life and in your mental health. So I definitely recommend it. Going into number 3, make sure you save money and get educated on finances, taxes, and stuff. Now, this one, I feel like is a given. I will say it's a work in progress, at least for me, at least like the taxes and stuff, because unfortunately, and I know a lot of millennials can attest to this, like growing up in school, a lot of us like didn't learn how to manage finances. We didn't learn about taxes, mortgage loans, all, car insurance, just insurance in general, like all that type of stuff. Then we went to college and it's like, unless you like were majoring in this, it's like, okay, well, you didn't get the learning or the training to understand this stuff there either. And, that's kind of why I say that it's like still work in progress, because I still feel like I'm still trying to understand certain things about taxes and stuff and just being totally honest and transparent. But either way, like get educated, and that's something I'm trying to do. Like my husband is better at this stuff. But like get educated, like yesterday, like you say, like you should have did already do it yesterday. Like, learn how to save money, learn about 401ks, IRA accounts, learn about retirement, like all that type of stuff. It's so much better to learn it when you are younger so that you can set your family up for success in the future. And the truth is it's never too late to start learning. This is just a big one. I needed to include it in there. Next one, number 4, is invest in new skills and hobbies. And I feel like this is something that I'm starting to do more. Like, I mean, hey, starting this podcast was like a part of this point of like starting a new hobby and like learning a new skill. I feel like in our 20s, we can get so caught up in like the mundane, in the work, the school, the eat, sleep, poop. Maybe you have a hobby here and there, maybe you don't. But I feel like it's so important, though, that we allow our minds to have the freedom to like explore these, like these new skills and try new things, or invest in the hobbies like that we already have. Like besides resting, we all need, at least I think it's good for our minds to devote time to something that will help us like flourish in a creative manner. Whether you're getting involved in your local basketball games for adults or the baseball league at the community center, you're learning how to knit or sew, or you're learning a new musical instrument, you're volunteering at the homeless shelter, your church, you're learning how to build things, exploring your, things with cooking. That's something I have done. I've really gotten into like cooking, like really good meals and stuff, a little bit more sophisticated meals, because it's fun to me and it's interesting. Explore your creativity once again. I think as adults, like it's so hard to make time for this stuff, but even if you just invest that little bit of time, like, once a week or like every other week, like I guarantee that like you will see a difference in your mental health, because you're actually putting in the time to allow your mind to rest. You may say, well, your mind's not resting, but I feel like it's like a different form of rest. It's like you're not worrying about all the like responsibilities you have, but you're letting your mind explore and wander. And I just think that's important. And I think that that's something that in your 20s, it's so easy to lose. Going on to number 5, self-reflect and become more self-aware. This one has been a huge thing that I've learned in my 20s. I feel like in my early 20s, I was a lot more emotional. All right. And, I didn't know how to manage my emotions properly. I'm just going to put myself on blast. And I have learned a lot since then. And I honestly, it was just immaturity at its finest. And, I needed to learn how to sort through the things that I was dealing with and the things that were going on in my head. This point, I definitely can say that I learned from my husband. He's the best at it. The concept of being self-aware, it sounds weird to say, but like, check in with yourself. Ask yourself, like, how is your mental health doing? Ask yourself how you're feeling. How are you processing the new things going on in your life or the changes that you're experiencing? or whatever challenges that you're facing. I started doing this whenever I felt like I was heading to like a negative mental state. And it's helped me to regulate my emotions and process things in a more healthy manner. Like instead of always being on edge or always being hyped up, I feel like I'm a lot more like lax. And I'm like, hold on, like hold the phone. Like I kind of pause a little bit more. Now I'm human, of course. Okay. So I'm not going to always have it right. And there's going to be things that make my blood boil. And there are things that kind of like, poke at me and stuff. But, you know, it's just something that I think that once you start practicing it and practicing being more self aware and practicing self reflection, you can allow yourself again just to be more regulated. Because the truth is as we get older, you've heard the saying, either you get older and you get meaner, or you get older and you get nicer. But the truth is like we should become more happy, not more cynical. If you watch all those, like, there'll be those people that are on the news and they're like, they live to be like 105 and they're like, what's the key to living long? And they're like, not stressing. You know what I mean? And it's like, I think it correlates with this too. Like, it's okay to be angry and it's okay to be sad. And like, these are normal human emotions. But I just think that the key is learning how to reflect and be self aware, knowing what triggers you, what gets on your nerves, what gets under your skin. Okay, well, how can you deal with that? How can you avoid these triggers? And what are these things that are impacting you? And, just knowing these things, really like look into yourself and deep dive. And it has been crucial. Like I can definitely say that I have had a serious 180 when it comes to the way I act emotionally than how I did like when I first turned like 20 years old. Like, oh my God, it's like night and day. And again, I'm not perfect. I never will be. And I still have emotions. But when you continuously practice this, like I mentioned, you will see a difference. And of course, like I mentioned, it just helps reduce stress and it helps you know yourself better. So you can also avoid situations that are not good for you. So the next couple that I want to get into are definitely connected, but still are different in their own way. So number 6, letting go is freedom. I used to be a person that held on to things and held grudges, couldn't get over stuff. And I will say that one thing about myself is I have a very, very good memory. Like I remember everything. And it's hard when you remember everything to let go of stuff. Like you can tell yourself like you forgive or whatever, but it is so hard to forget. But like the last point, becoming more self-aware and self-reflecting, it's allowed me to see that I've held on to a lot of stuff that I shouldn't, and there are certain things that when they happen I hold on to them and I don't let them go, and I don't let these things have a hold on me like I used to. You have to learn to let go. You have to learn how to forgive, and it may be hard to forget, but you have to try to move on. All these things are key when you're in your 20s, because you're dealing with a lot of different relationships, whether it's family, a significant other, work, school, whatever. There's so much going on around you. And sometimes you can feel like the weight of all these things is on your shoulders. And I've definitely felt that myself. But like, if you can, and depending on what these things are, only you will know, like, let it go. Like, if it's petty, let it go. If you can't control it, oh my God, this is such a big one. If you can't control it, let it go. And this was a big one for me because I am 100% like, I can be a serious control freak sometimes. Like, and I don't know if it's just like a form of OCD, but I can be very like needing things to be in control all the time. But if there's anything I've learned, especially after having a child, like letting go of the things that like you can't control. And if someone doesn't want to change or the circumstances can't change, let it go. Now, obviously, I know that this is like all easier said and done, but it's more so just about understanding that choosing to let go is a decision. Following up with that afterward is the part that you could be constantly working on, but you have to make the conscious decision to actually let go. Let go of the things that bother you. Let go of the stuff that's just not important. Focus on what's in front of you and obtaining the peace that you need to live a happy and healthy life. Going into number 7, like I mentioned, these connect. Don't rush anything. This is like something I feel like I'm still learning. But, we live in a society, at least in America, where I feel like there's so much pressure to have your life figured out in your 20s. You have to graduate college, you have to get married, have kids, buy your forever home, have your dream job, all in a span of 10 years. And when you think about that, like, how unrealistic is that? Like, fresh out of high school, almost, 2 years out of high school, you got to have all this stuff in check. Like, how unrealistic is that, really? And why specifically in your 20s? Like, maybe it isn't time for some of these things to happen for you yet. And like, that's okay. And you have to be okay with that. Maybe you don't have, or, the job that you want right now or the job position, but life comes with ups and downs. Maybe you're not living where you want to live, but things are always changing, and sometimes things in life are not always handed to you. Like, you may have to work harder and smarter, and you may have to do things different and really invest time, like years, into the life that you truly want for yourself. Like, some things really take time. And, like, I get it. Like, things like having children and graduating from college, like, you may want to do these things, as far as like the kids aspect, for health, because I'm sure that there are women out there that don't want to be like 50 years old, like, having a baby. And, when it comes to like, wanting to like get that job, or whatever, of course, you want to make sure that you go to school so that you can get that job. But my point is that if you don't have these things in check in your 20s, you don't have to, and that is okay. And it's normal. You don't have to be in a relationship with your significant other in your 20s. You may not meet them until your 30s, or 40s. Like, everything happens at different times for different people. Life is not linear, and I've talked about this all the time in previous podcasts. I have certainly like felt a lot of these pressures and to, like, having to have these things in line, which brings me to number 8. You don't have to have it all figured out. Again, society pushes this narrative. Society tells us that you have to have everything together and all your ducks in a row in your 20s. You have to land on your chosen career path, which is pressured on us when we're 18 years old, when we graduate high school, which, in all honesty, I really don't understand. Like, this only truly works for some people. But I can tell you right now, 28 years old, like, I feel like I'm just starting to like figure my life out. And I know I'm not the only one. And it's sad because so many of us have like different circumstances that have brought us to where we are, but we still end up comparing ourselves to others, especially on social media, when they're actually on an entirely different life path. Right? And, it's just like, don't be so hard on yourself to think that you have to have it all figured out. Like, I don't have it all figured out, but guess what? I have a roof over my head. I have food in the fridge. I have clothes on my back. I have a loving and healthy family, and I'm healthy. And like, that is so much more than a lot of people have in this world, or what some people could ever ask for. Like, I'll get to where I need to be in the right timing. You will get to be where you need to be in the right timing. You have to trust that. So, especially if you're doing what you can to get to the next stage of your life. Which brings me to number 9. Like, don't compare your journey to someone else's journey. All these points go together, like I mentioned, but I feel like they still stand alone. Comparison is the key to disappointment. You will never be happy comparing yourself to someone, and you will never come out feeling completely good about yourself, especially if you're putting that person down just to lift yourself up, or you're putting yourself down because you think that they're on a pedestal. I moved halfway across the country with my family while pregnant, and we only have like a few family members here, and like, we're still planting our feet. It takes time. It takes years to settle in a new state. We've been here for a year and a half. And, we don't have all the help in the world when it comes to our son, when it comes like family village. Like, obviously we have our family here, but like, we don't have like our parents and stuff, like, and different family members. All of our siblings are not here and stuff like that. We're still learning the state. We're still learning to explore and such. But it would be so stupid for me to look at some other mom on Instagram or TikTok who has all the help in the world because she never left her home state, which no hate, and who has this big house and who has this and that. Her circumstances are completely different. And like, this is also for all my moms out there. Like, don't compare your mom journey or your body journey or your postpartum journey to other moms. Different circumstances, different genetics are at play here, and different walks of life can impact all of those things. So my point with this one is to stop comparing yourself to other people. Stop looking at social media. I talked about this in my first episode, the Tea on Social Media. Go listen to it, first episode. Stop looking at others and thinking about what you don't have or what they have or you need or, whatever. Which brings me to number 10. Social media will become less and less appealing. It's interesting because again, I'm always talking about like my distaste for social media, even though I use it. No, I'm not a hypocrite. I don't have a problem with social media in itself. I have a problem with what society has turned social media into, and I have an issue with the way that people use it. And, over time, as I've gotten older in my 20s, I find myself caring less and less about it. Like, I literally don't care to post. I don't care to update people about my life. I don't care about the latest social media. No shade to the whole Be Real. But if Elon Musk brings Vine back, I will be on Vine. And I think it's just because when you get older and throughout your 20s, like you learn about all the stuff that I mentioned, previously. And when you take away all the comparisons and all the type of stuff, you start to focus on your own life and you start to stay in your own lane and you let go and you're just less interested in what other people are doing. Social media has just become so like toxic and censored. I'm just going to be honest. I remember there used to be certain aspects about social media that I used to be into, like certain YouTubers and YouTube drama. Okay, don't judge me, all right? But stuff like that. It was entertainment to me. And now I don't care what Jeffree Star or Shane Dawson are doing. No hate, all right? I just don't care. I don't care about the freaking Kardashians. You start to learn that social media, unfortunately, it was birthed to connect you with your loved ones and different people. But it's just turned into one big smokescreen and people are only putting out their best, which I get. Why would you want to share like when you're like on the floor crying? You just start to realize like it isn't real. Again, go listen to the Tea on Social Media episode 1. It just has become less and less appealing. And you see all the women that Photoshop and all the lies, and it's just one big performance for a lot of people. Which, speaking of Photoshop, number 11, your body will change in your 20s and it's normal. I did an episode on body image and society views. I feel like I'm shouting out so many episodes. But, I did an episode on it. Go check it out if you haven't. But obviously, trigger warning if that's, if you feel like you have, if you have body dysmorphia or if you have issues with body image, anorexia or anything, please maybe avoid that episode. But anyway, I was not prepared for how my body would change in my 20s. I've talked about this before, but I am on the slender side. I technically still am, I guess. But like I have more meat on my thighs and I have like stretch marks from pregnancy and, I gain weight faster than I used to. And especially after having a baby, like I have to work like 3 times harder to like get my body to a healthy place or like a fitness goal that I have. And it sounds so obvious that your body would change, but I feel like a lot of people like aren't aware of it. And then they end up like they don't make the healthy, conscious decisions that they should be making, to make sure at least that their health is in check. Like I used to be able to eat whatever I wanted. And now like if I have to eat healthy, and if I don't, not only do I see an impact on how like my body changes with weight, but also how I feel like internally. And I used to be able to just do whatever. I'm talking about having energy, having the stamina, things like that. It's not just about like the weight gain. Like your body is just going to change. Your metabolism may slow down. I have to work out Otherwise, my body doesn't do well. And I learned that, especially after pregnancy. I just wanted to bring this up. Like, it is normal. It is normal for your body to change. Like, don't beat yourself up. If it's changing, just do what you need to do to be healthy, whether that's doing certain fitness things like yoga, Pilates, or, cycling, or, changing your eating habits. I'm not saying go on a diet, but just making more healthy, like conscious decisions as far as what you're eating in your body, and, putting in your body, I mean. So I just wanted to add this in there because I feel like it is just so crucial that no one wants to talk about and no one wants to acknowledge. Kind of jumping into more personal life things that we go through. Number 12, marriage is not hard. Marriage is work. And there's so much I could say about this. Like I said, I could do a whole podcast on marriage. But I'm gonna try to not make this not too long, convoluted. I hear so many people say that marriage is hard, and I've been married for 4.5 years, so I know I don't have decades of experience. I can just go off of my 4.5 years. Before that, my husband were together for 4.5 years. But if there's one thing I learned, it's that marriage is just work. And it doesn't mean what you think. Like, some people think, oh, that's a negative connotation to marriage if you say it's work. No, work isn't a bad thing. It just means that within marriage, you actually have to put effort into being a good partner to your spouse, as well as them, you holding them accountable for the same thing. You have to try. You have to put effort into communication. Me and my husband, we swear by this. You have to put effort into transparency. You have to put effort into making your spouse happy and them making you happy and being on the same page as far as everything, whether it be how you all live your lives, faith, finances, everything. You have to invest in one another. You have to build each other up. And then you also have to even work harder at this after you have a child. And we've been learning that just because, with the child, you're so busy with your baby that, sometimes you end up not having as much time together. Make the necessary time. Something that me and my husband do intentionally is that we watch shows together. So we'll have a TV show that we will watch every single night after our babe goes to bed, and we get into a show together, and it's one of the things that we do to bond and to spend time together. And obviously we do other things, but that's just something. It's just the intentionality. And that's the difference. But I wouldn't say that marriage is hard. As long as you're with the right person, I don't believe it's hard. And that's just me. There's so many people that have failed marriages just because they didn't want to put in the effort. Put in the effort. It's not always about infidelity. You just have to give a crap, okay? Anyway, going into number 13. This is connected. There's never a perfect time to have a child. Okay? My husband and I, we originally wanted to wait 2 years after getting married to try for a child. 2 years rolled around and the pandemic hit. So we waited because we didn't know the certainty of health in the world and stuff. And, as things started to lift up in the world and get better, we had the conversation again. And it was him who initiated it. And it actually wasn't him who was hesitant. It was me. Because I was struggling with obsessing over the perfect time, the best time, and I just kind of had to wake up one day and realize I'm never going to wake up one day and say, oh, I'm ready. I'm ready. A lot of times that doesn't happen. For some people it might, but it may not happen. And after talking about it with my husband, I realized that specific time was just I was never going to feel good enough to jump into parenthood, there was no epiphany that was going to happen one day that marks you ready to and say, oh, I have everything figured out in life just to, to have a child. And I know there's a lot of people out there that probably feel this way. Now, I'm not just saying, okay, just to have a child when you have no place to live, no finances, no. Obviously have your tangible things in check, a place to live, jobs, finances and stuff. But me and my husband literally decided to get pregnant right before we knew we were moving our lives across the country. Why we did that, I have no idea, but it ended up being amazing. No regrets. and it just felt right for us. And we love our little bub, okay? But I think if you have all the other things in check, again, there's just never going to be like this perfect time that you're looking for. Things are always going to be changing. Life is always going to be busy. And I guess my point is that if you want to be a parent, like, don't hold yourself back because you're waiting for this perfect time to like show up, and for like the clouds to open and for the sun to beam down on you and say, all right, you're ready to have, you're ready. You know, that's just my opinion. Going into the next thing, family related. Number 14, love on your parents. I just kind of want to touch on this quickly, but I feel like it's huge. I will say I know that this is not easy and it's not possible for everyone. I know that there are some people that may have lost their parents, and my condolences to you, or they have estranged relationships with their parents for whatever reason. I'm not so much talking about that group of people because I know that obviously there are some circumstances in life where it just may not be possible. But more so, like, if you're in a place where this is possible, please do it, because you won't have your parents for the rest of your life most of the time. God forbid you pass before they do. Love on your parents. If you guys don't connect because of petty stuff, like, fix it. You know what I mean? Make up. Do what you can to repair your relationship with your parents, because when they are older and are closer to leaving this earth, you're going to wish that you didn't waste the time. And again, this is this is applicable for you. I know people who have lost their parents. They treated their parents like crap all the way until their parent passed away. And now they have so much remorse and so much anguish because they can't get that parent back and they can't undo what they did. Like, don't have that on your heart for the rest of your life. If you can fix it, fix it. Now, obviously, I know there are certain circumstances, trigger warning, of like abuse and stuff like that, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you and your parent having a disagreement over something really dumb, and you guys, and there is an ability to come together, but maybe you just don't want to because you have an opinion on them or whatever. Like, relinquish that and move on and love on your parents. Which connects extremely to number 15. Know that things from your childhood may come out. But please, 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 please learn how to heal and deal. In your 20s, again, you're experiencing the different relationships, you're going through all these new life changes. And I see a lot of millennials talk about this all the time, about childhood trauma coming out. And it's so real, and it's happened to all of us. And it's hard too, because sometimes you don't even realize it. And then you sometimes may think, like, how can I fix like what happened with my family like decades ago? And again, I think this depends on the circumstances. Like, childhood trauma can range from just seeing your parents constantly argue, so that it affects your relationships and how you have relationships with people. Or it could be all the way to, again, trigger warning, like abuse. Obviously those who have experienced more triggering, more difficult childhood trauma, like 100% seek help and counsel, see a therapist, get therapy, someone who can like support you through working through those, issues, and know that there's nothing wrong with getting help. But, at the end of the day, I feel like if the childhood trauma is more on like the emotional damage side, like, you may have to work on yourself to heal from that stuff. Again, I strongly encourage therapy, no matter where you are on the spectrum. If you're on the, of course, more difficult side of the spectrum, you don't deserve to live your life with that pain and anguish if there was abuse or different things going on. But no matter where you are, like, talk to somebody, get into a support group, do what you can. Because if you don't, it may come out in your friendships, in your relationships, and how you view life. You may not be able to forgive your parents, which, again, if you have the capability of loving on your parents, please do. Please forgive. If, you know what I mean, like, deal with it the way you see fit. Because some of us, it was just our parents arguing. Sometimes, some of us, it was even worse. But, like, if it's the emotional aspect, and let's say your parents have changed and they have become, they have really turned around, like, work work towards, again, like I said, repairing that relationship, like I said in the previous point, but then also work on yourself, because you may find yourself having issues maintaining relationships or having emotional issues. And you have to work on yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be in your 40s, you're going to be cynical, you're going to be mean, and you're going to pass that on to your children. Don't do it. Know that the childhood trauma may come out because you're reaching adulthood, you're doing different things, and seek help, work on yourself, and do what you need to do to move on. Healing is possible. It's not done overnight, but it is possible. And this also goes back to just being more self-aware and self-reflecting. Going into number 16, you may find yourself more alone than you ever have been. Life gets so busy in your 20s. I've talked about this already. There's work, there's school, there's outside hobbies, there's relationships, marriages, kids, and you may find yourself like more isolated than you ever have. The friends and BFFs you once have, like you still have them, but no one has time for one another because you've either moved away, you have kids, schedule conflicts, all that type of stuff. And it's hard because in your 20s, I feel like you need community more than ever, because you're all the life changes that one experience, and then also just being so busy. And you may find yourself like missing out on stuff because of work or because of having kids or whatever. You may not be able to go out like you used to. You may be the one friend of the only one friend in your group that is married or has the children or whatever, or the certain type of job. So you may feel lonely when you're not able to get involved. And it's unfortunate, and it's normal. So you may experience that. It's very normal, which connects right to number 17. You may have to make an effort. You're more than likely going to have to make effort to find your community. I'm still working on this myself, considering I moved to an entirely new state. But, it's not like how we were growing up. Growing up, you could just go to school. You could make new friends with the people in your class or after school activities, whether you were in basketball, volleyball, cheerleading, or student council or whatever. But when you're in your 20s, you actually have to put in effort to make, new friends and open up to new people. Now, this may come easy for you, depending on the circumstances, because maybe you have a job where everyone works together, but then you may have a job, where everyone kind of does their own individual work and everyone kind of stays to themselves. So you just may have to put in effort to get involved in your community, or get involved with the people at your job, depending on the circumstances there. Finding that new hobby and that new skill can open up doors to find community as well. Like I mentioned earlier, get involved in your church, in your community, get involved at the shelter, get involved in the sports. If there are some adult sports or whatever, put yourself out there, connect with new people wherever you are. Life is just so much better when done in community. And it's hard because it's we grew up for 18 years of our lives surrounded by community. And then all of a sudden we have to get jobs and do this, and we get married and we have kids, and then we become isolated. And I just think it just affects, our mental health even more in our 20s. So I definitely recommend that. Going to number 18, investing in your faith may become more difficult. I've stated many times on this podcast that I am Christian. And, I talked about my experience with being hurt by the church in a previous episode. Go listen. I know it's long, but it's good. Okay. I've learned in my 20s that it has been harder to invest time into my faith with God. And, I'm not trying to make an excuse, but obviously, again, in your 20s and even just beyond, life just becomes so busy with everything going on that by the time you get alone time, sometimes you just want peace and quiet. And I don't mean that you can't be with God in peace and quiet. I mean, you just want to sit there and stare at the TV or do nothing, or just go to sleep or whatever. But again, you have to be intentional. I've been telling myself okay, I have to actually set aside specific time. I have to set small goals within my faith. I want to complete this devotional, or I want to read this many chapters in the Bible in this amount of time. Be realistic with yourself and stay encouraged in prayer. You can always pray. And that's what I always have to remind myself. It doesn't matter where I am, I can pray. There's no excuse. And if I'm somewhere where I can listen to worship music, tap in. And if you're not a believer and you're listening to this podcast, this may or may not apply to you. But, I think whatever faith you have, take more time to invest in it, because it does become more difficult as you become busy with kids and marriage or jobs or whatever, family, Going into 19, failure is learning. This has been such a big one for me. I have failed so many times in my 20s. I've made dumb decisions. I've made haste decisions, weird decisions, everything that you can think of. You name it, I've done it. And I've discouraged myself so much because of it. I've been so hard on myself, which I normally and consistently am. My husband gets on me about this, telling me not to be so hard on myself. But, I've had to learn the hard way with a lot of things. And I've had to learn that failure is learning. That if I didn't fail, I wouldn't have learned what to do and what not to do. And the truth is that sometimes in life, like, you have to learn the hard way. Like, that's the only way it's going to happen for you. You have to learn in ways that you wouldn't think. But the more, you discourage yourself, the more you're not allowing yourself to stretch in a moment where you may need to be flexible. Just bite the bullet, like own your failures and move on. Whether you said the wrong thing to somebody, you chose the wrong path, you made a mistake, and you've made, let's say you made that same mistake a million times before, whatever it is. Like, own it. Own your stuff. Tomorrow is a new day to start over and begin again. It's okay to fail. It's only silly and it's only dumb when you don't learn from it and when you don't take the lesson and move forward and progress. So don't give up on yourself if you failed a lot. Start over tomorrow. It's a brand fresh new day. And here we go. The last one, number 20. I had to save this one for the end because I just had to. Don't be afraid to go after your dreams if you haven't. I've said this already a million times, but we live in this society where you have to just have all your stuff together in your 20s. But the truth is that we may not. And that is like so normal. And I feel like, again, needs to be normalized. But I'm talking about like when it comes to like accomplishing dreams. Because earlier, I talked about how, it's like, oh, you got to have the kids, you got to get married, you got to have the house. But I'm talking about like whatever your dream is in life. Let's say you haven't gone after it, or let's say you have a new dream. You wanted to do this and now you want to do something totally different. It's not too late. We may not reach every goal in our 20s. We may not get to the big dream in our 20s. There are so many people out there that have become, successful later in life. Martha Stewart. She didn't start doing like her cookbooks and stuff until she was in her 40s. Let's take it back to, President Lincoln. At age 40, he left the House of Representatives. He started practicing law. And then he was elected president a few years after that. You hear about this. And, you hear about, different people that, achieved success later in their life and they weren't failures. You look at them, you say, oh my God, like they were not failures by any means. Like these are people that we know. These are people that, are staples and like are household names. And it's like we have to think about that. There's others like Stan Lee, comic book wrote all, most of the Marvel comics. Morgan Freeman. Oh my God, a goat in Hollywood. He was 50 years old when he landed his big break. Steve Carell, 43 years old. Harrison Ford. My Indiana Jones. 35. There's more. There's so many more. Like I'm looking at this list right now of so many that have breakthrough role. Oh my God, Bryan Cranston. I have to bring this up because I love Breaking Bad, but he received his breakthrough role when he was on Malcolm in the Middle when he was 44 years old. There's so many. Davis, 43, when she got her big role. You see what I'm saying? Oprah Winfrey, she was 32 years old when she was doing the talk shows. And not even just that. Let's go to the Bible. Abraham waited 30 years to have a son. Noah waited 120 years for it to rain. Moses waited 40 years in Midian. David waited 20 years to become king. Like, where do we get off thinking that we have to have our dreams accomplished? We have to do all this type of stuff. We got to be millionaires, and we have to do all this type of stuff while we're in our 20s. And if you don't, well, oops, sorry for you. Where do we get off thinking this when we have our whole life ahead of us? Maybe you didn't pursue your dreams when you were younger. Pursue them now, and it's okay. What's more important to you, that you pursued the dream or when it happened? Are you going to look back and wish that, it was done at a specific time? Or you're just going to be happy that you did it? We need to normalize not everybody, accomplishing these big, crazy dreams, in their 20s. We have to. And, I just want to encourage you today that if you haven't gotten to where you want to be in your 20s, that it is normal. Don't let society and social media, don't let that talk you out of what you want to do and believing in yourself. You can do anything you set your mind to whenever. And that's the difference. You can be in your 30s and 40s. All those people I mentioned, those household names, those big people that we all know. The waiting is okay. As long as we're trying and persevering, that's all that matters. And just don't let go of your dreams. Well, as you know, that was number 20. I feel like we just blazed through all of those, but those are 20 things that I have learned in my 20s. Those are 20 things that I'm constantly reminding myself of, and 20 things that I'm holding on to. And I'm just very thankful to God that I've learned. And I hope that, wherever you are in your life, that there are things that you can talk about that you may have learned, whether it was some of these things or some different things. And if they're different things, I would love to hear it. And go ahead and leave a comment or anything. I'd love to hear some of the things you've learned in your 20s. I want to go ahead and just wrap up this podcast by saying no matter where you are in life, whether you're in your 20s or you're not, keep going, keep pressing on, and keep pushing towards whatever you need to. Continue to grow, continue to try to learn everything, Learn anything you can from different people. Talk to people that are older than you, people that are younger than you. Always just be willing to learn. And that was something that I had to tell myself too, be willing to stretch and be flexible. I'm not going to have it all figured out. You may not have it all figured out, but the best thing that you could do is just know that you are at least growing and learning. That's the best thing that we could do for ourselves. But again, that was number 20. So I want to just wrap up today's podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Like I said, we blazed through, but I don't like to waste time. I like to kind of get in the nitty gritty. But thank you so much for listening to today's podcast and some of the things that I've learned in my 20s. Again, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. I just want to say a quick prayer, really quick. I just pray that wherever you are in your 20s, if you are in your 20s or you're not, that you will find the strength you need to continue persevering, that you will keep learning and growing, and that you will become the person that you need to be, and that person does not have to be someone in their 20s, and that you can continue to grow and be whoever you need to be in the right timing. In Jesus' name. But again, podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, and Apple Podcasts. Follow the Instagram page at My So-Called Thoughts Pod. Leave a like, comment, review, all that type of good stuff, and stay tuned. I'm going to continue the podcast for the next several weeks. I will say that I probably will be wrapping up season 1 by the end of this year, and then season 2 will probably pick up sometime in the spring. I'm still kind of evaluating that and planning things out, but just want to put that out there. I'm super happy that we just made it, this far, and I've been doing this for so long. It just for 15 episodes, and just thank you so much for tuning in and listening and just being a part. It just really means a lot to me, so I'm super thankful. But again, hope you're doing well wherever you are. And this is Sunray. I'm out. Peace.